Hey, folks, and welcome back to Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we're talking about where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how to stop those leaks, and even how to get women back when they've left the workforce. And of course, one of the things that can happen for women in water is that they're not necessarily working for a large organization. They may come to that point where they decide, that's it, especially after COVID, that's it, I'm hanging my shingle. Well, if you're doing that in the water and the environmental space, chances are the money in that space is going to public agencies, which means you need to learn government contracting. And we have one of the best experts on government contracting and all the laws and legislative activity around that. And Sullivan, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here and hope I can share something that will be of interest and valuable to your audience.
And of course, we met through an organization called Women Impacting Public Policy, which was a spinoff of National Association of Women Business Owners that started around 2000. The year 2000 was very significant in the government contracting space. What happened in the year 2000, Ann?
Well, in the year 2000, the Congress passed a law that said women should be eligible for getting set-aside contracts in federal contracting. Set-aside contracts limits the amount of competition that you have because it limits it to women only to bid. And that in the world of government contracting, where there are so many qualified vendors all trying to get work, that's a real leg up. So that's what the Congress did.
And it was supposed to be 5% of the contracts. Now, fast forward to 2007, beginning of 2008, when I come back to Capitol Hill, hang my shingle, and come to find that as of that point, there was no program yet in the Small Business Administration. And that was something where you and I worked together in some of the meetings on Capitol Hill. And was it Senator Kerry? John Kerry was senator at the time doing small business, had a hearing on that. The White House, they had some hearings. Cal Penn, the actor, was working for the White House. He was part of that meeting, I remember. And, talking about what would this program look like? So how did that program come together and how has it evolved?
Well, let me just say that it did not come easily. It took me and the folks that worked with me 11 years to get the program in place. And why is that? Because it was the view of many in the administration at the time, so this was under George Bush, who said, women are the majority of the country. We don't really know why you need any help. We had all the statistics, we had all the evidence, but that didn't mean they wanted to put a program in place. So we basically had to force them. And what that meant was like organizing tens of thousands of women to write letters saying, what are you kidding? We demand action. It took actions like getting all the women in Congress to sign a letter to the SBA saying you need to get this program in place. It required putting together like huge hearings, that with women, enthusiastic women in the audience, to impress upon our legislators why it was important and why we needed a program. In 2007, the pressure worked, but unfortunately it didn't work very well because the SBA put out a program that would have only let 4 categories of industry be eligible for a program. So it was like ATVs and cabinetry and just, stuff that was ridiculous.
Getting the coffee.
So then we had to get rid of that, right?
Yeah.
Start all over and press for a really good program, which actually we finally got. The other piece of it was that there was no sole source authority, and the government can allow an agency to award a sole source contract to you if they want to. but the program that was passed did not have that authority. So we had to work 3 more years to get that put in place, to give it so that we at least had equity with the other programs that are out there for disadvantaged individuals.
So, you know, for those who haven't yet done government contracting, it's one thing to work for a consulting firm. And, you know, I did a lot of work in business development. I'd written back in the day of the 254, 255 federal contracting and writing up all the proposals and the past projects and everything that big consulting firms do. You know, and same thing for big, you know, educational grants and everything. But when it's just you know, you want to have, you're going to be, first of all, if you get registered as a woman-owned small business or an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, that's just a hunting license, right? That doesn't guarantee you get anything, right?
No, it just means that you're actually considered to be legitimately owned and operated as a woman-owned company, that you're small by SBA standards. So it's for small businesses, not, you know, large businesses. And it requires, you know, it requires you to get certified now, at this time, or if you want to use that program to get set-asides or sole sources, basically you have to be certified through an SBA portal.
Right, right. And so all of these organizations were just getting started that could be those SBA portals. There's a lot of confusion about how to, I think I spent, I don't know, $2,500 on someone who says, yeah, but you had to have a business plan. And the business plan she wrote was like such crap. It was like, water is important. Water is a big business. You know, that's why this woman has this business. It had nothing to, you know, it's like, I could write a better business plan. You can write a good business plan. There's templates online, folks. You know your business better than anyone. You know, maybe get advice, but you know, there's the women-owned small business centers and things. There's some good places that you can get advice. But paying someone at $2,500 was worth a lot more back then. For business plan, yes.
You know, so one of the things that's really happened that has been very beneficial is that there are not just individual vendors like you experienced, but the government has all kinds of resources for you. The SBA has all kinds of resources. The GSA, which is the General Services Administration, has all kinds of, I mean, resources coming out of your ears. And if you are smart, you'll take advantage of anything free, because the body of knowledge required to successfully win government contracts is substantial. So, you know, rather than spend a lot of money with a lot of individual vendors who might help you, you're better off coming up with a streamlined plan to start learning about it. And then people, even like my firm, like, we can help you supplement, you know, we can supplement it.
Right.
We can, you know, elevate your business. That's what we do a lot of, elevate the owner, because you have to stand out, right? So if you testify before Congress, that makes your business a lot safer, so to speak, and a lot more prestigious than perhaps the rest of the world that's out there trying to get the same contract. So there's all kinds of tricks to the trade, but you're exactly right. You know, first use the free and valuable tools that you've got at your disposal.
And when I was in San Diego, they had I did an entire incubator program with Stella Labs, which is fabulous. Like, we interviewed someone who had been funded through their kind of more advanced, the one that actually gets money. We were the ones who were like learning how to do business plans and marketing plans and all that kind of stuff. But it was held within a We Bank, or what do they call it? The women economic.
We Bank.
Yeah. But it was one of these small business centers that had a women's program specifically in there. So look for those small business programs. A lot of them, they don't say free. They say, you know, paid for by your tax dollars. You know, this is, you know, we're paid for it. We are professionals. This is not free, but this is, you know, you don't get charged for it as a small business. So those are very good. Now, part of that, as you mentioned, you know, the categories is understanding these nice codes, and that's not nice like nice versus naughty. That's the the different codes for the different types of contracts that you're going to get. Explain the whole the NAICS. I forget what that's.
Okay, people pronounce that 1,000 different ways, but I pronounce it NAICS, and a lot of other people I know pronounce it NAICS. So the NAICS codes are simply industry codes. So everything the government buys, they've coded in a certain category of business. So, your NAICS code, they're five digits, and I think they're 5 digits. And they could cover, let's say, let me give you an example. So one might be administration or administrative, and then it covers anything you could think of under administrative would be under that NAICS code. But that's the category you are assigned or that you chose. Be careful that you choose the right category, right? Because you're kind of stuck with it, and that's what the government is going to assume you are providing. So, not a huge deal, but again, an important part of the puzzle that you want to make sure you are paying attention to. And with every NAICS code comes a dollar amount that you can be considered small under, right? So you need to make sure that your revenues are under the limit that is set for those NAICS codes. That's another thing. It's just kind of endless, I know, and it's not that complicated, but it is time consuming, at least when you're starting out. The other thing I would say about women in business that are contractors, they will drop anything to help you. Like, you could call any woman-owned contractor, federal contractor, and ask her a question, or say, I'm stuck. I just need a little advice. And I'm telling you right now, those women will drop everything to help you. So there is a real sisterhood to tap into that is extremely helpful.
Well, and actually, before I started this, and for those of you who watched a few of these may have heard some of my stories, and I never thought of myself as a feminist or joined any women's organizations until I started getting into environmental consulting firms. But when I started my own firm, I was like, okay, I'm going to need some help. I joined 2 organizations, one being WIPP, the other Women Impacting Public Policy, the other being Women's Council on Energy and the Environment. But, when I ran into problems, including things like sexual harassment by, I was able to find a lawyer who was willing to talk to me and explain just how, those laws are written for employer relationships. And so if you're out there on your own and you start getting harassed, or somebody does a quid pro quo and threatens to take your clients if you don't sleep with them, or actually does take your clients if you don't sleep with them, as happened with me, you've got really little recourse. And it just so just having that, at least I knew where I stood. It didn't help at the end, but it did help me to at least be able to access a lawyer who wasn't going to charge me to explain that it wasn't worth trying to pursue. But there are things that we need to consider in terms of what happens when you have a legal issue. Like, there were so many stories of, women, and this has happened to me as well. Women are brought on perhaps because, especially in the water and environmental space, right? It's mostly large organizations, and they may want to bring in, some diversity on their committee, on their team, by having a women-owned small business, or a minority-owned small business, or a veteran-owned small business, or what have you. And, if the contract says that you're going to get such and such percent, you should be able to get that percent. And it's not, if you're down at the bottom of the totem pole and say, well, we don't pay any of our subs until we get paid, and then the sub gets paid, and then sub gets paid, and sub gets paid, sub. So that's where you may be down there.
And those are the sorts of things that we've been tackling, right? So one is what you're describing is subcontracting, which is the government has a relationship with the prime contractor, which is the big one, right? But they can't just have it all themselves. They have to have subcontracting if they are federal contractors. They have to put together a plan. So the trick is, from our standpoint, is making sure that people follow their plan, that they use the contractors that were put on the plan, and that they, treat them fairly. And so there's a whole body of legislation that we've been putting together in the last couple of years, and it looks like maybe this year we'll be able to get it through the Congress, which makes it much compelling for the prime contractor to treat their subs the way they ought to be treated, because it will have an impact on their future ability to bid.
Right.
Now, so as problems come up, we're out there trying to solve them, and there are a million ways. The other thing I would say is that something probably since you last paid a lot of attention to it is that joint ventures really came into, it became a vehicle for small and large companies to join together to get business. And the SBA is the one that approves it. So it's a whole new kind of way of thinking about being a subcontractor, but not in a subcontractor role, rather as, an equal business, so to speak, with a big business. And there's just a lot of success stories. There are also horror stories, but we're always looking to try to, if we hear stories like that, to try to figure out, well, what could we do to make it better? So we're also working on that.
Well, because a lot of the stuff that we do online when we created Water Citizen was all about, we can use online platforms for, online business, online meetings and online media and education and all that stuff. A lot of the people who were doing that were in the, the solo coaching space, individual coaches, the brand-based, personal brand-based business. I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm an author, I'm an expert, whatever. And they call these joint venture partnerships. In many cases, they're basically cross-promotional kind of arrangements, right? But I had actually headed business development for a big firm, so I knew contracts and liabilities and JV, and those were really complex in the engineering space, right? That you had these, who had the insurance, who had the liability, all this other stuff, mutual indemnification clauses. You always look for your mutual indemnification clause. And I also learned very quickly that if we would get these marquee subcontractors, right? Somebody who just retired from, a big oil sands company that was like the top expert. And I took good care of my marquee subcontractors. Well, suddenly I go and hang my shingle. I'm the marquee subcontractor. I'm the one with the relationship with the client. Clients were coming to me. I didn't have the federal acquisition regulation, accounting system set up. So they're like, oh, we need you right now. Can you find someone that already has a contract with us? I was writing the damn proposals and then having to bring someone else on with me. And sometimes the agency really forces you in that position that you have the concept, it's your intellectual property, it's your idea, you have the relationship. And they say, well, it's too hard to contract a small one. You have to go through our prime contractor. And then you got to pay them part of it, to pass through the money. And then they want to have their own people do the work. And it goes on their portfolio that, oh, look, we did this work. It's like, it's my work. And suddenly they're competing with me for my own work. And then, turning around and saying, oh, wait, whoops, we can't do it ourselves. Can you come rescue us? I mean, it was crazy stuff that was going on with all these people wanting to work with me. And yeah, I had to go through contractors. Right.
Right. So this gives you the ability to decide what are the parameters, right? Do you want to be in a joint venture with these people or don't you? You're not forced to. And also, there's also something called a mentor-protege, all small mentor-protege program, which allows you to get in business with another business, basically do a mentor-protege, but with a small business. You could choose a woman-owned business. Yeah. You guys basically split the work so that you're not stuck
Yeah.
with some of the problems you just laid out when you've got, when it's a very large contractor.
Right. Right.
And there's a lot of minefields, but the program we talked about earlier, which is the Women-Owned Small Business Program, is for prime contracts only.
Mm-hmm.
So it's assuming the agency will contract with you directly through the program, not as a sub. And there are a lot of women who have built their firms now in government contracting saying, I'm not going to do sub work. I mean, they had to kind of do it to get their feet, on the ground, but a number of them won't do sub work. They'll only do prime contracts.
Yeah.
And they work with businesses that are like-minded, that are like them. And some of those are really successful relationships.
Yeah. And we have to look at this because, in the water and environmental space, first of all, that whole industry really exploded out of the 70s,
right,
and all these new regulations and utilities, and others didn't know how to handle it, and so you got these specialists, and they do it in one city, and then they shop it around to all the places all over the country, and they grew very quickly. And now you get a lot of private firms, Stantec, WSP, buying up all the regional firms and everything. So you got these mega conglomerate, ACOB, Jacob, huge firms, right?
Right. And actually, the government has, in many cases, has ended up increasing their it's contracting vehicles, which is just a fancy way of saying their contracts, right? So as the firms got bigger, like Jacobs Engineering, right? As the firms got bigger, so did the contracts. So the other thing you have to know if you're going to be a government contractor is you just need to know there are many forms of contracts. One is a simple direct contract, government to you. But then there are many that have, maybe the spend is $50 billion.
Right.
And they award 50 slots to 50 businesses to be able to compete for those $50 billion, right? So that's a whole different set of or kind of contract. But you just have to know things like that when you start, so that it's not all a mystery, and you learn the hard way by not having enough knowledge when it comes to understanding different ways that the government buys.
Yeah. And I knew all the right things. I just trusted the wrong people, I guess. But
well, that's the kinds of things every one of us is trying to avoid, right?
Right.
We don't want to learn the hard way,
and it's
better to learn it the other way.
When you invest, you have to stop everything, invest all your time and just a few baskets, and then you're working your tail off to try to actually do the work while you're also trying to line up the next contract, and so it can be tough, and then if something goes wrong with the prime, it can be tough. But one of the issues that I see a lot, well, two things. So right now we got a lot of money coming out there watering the environment. Huge $1 trillion infrastructure bill. And I keep telling people the $1 trillion infrastructure, it's not just the $55 billion for water and wastewater, which is just a drop in the bucket for all the needs that we have in that space, but it's every single piece of infrastructure. Anytime you build something, there's water quality impacts, there's water quantity needs, there's water supply needs for whatever it is you're building. And so it's you have to think about all of that. And so now a lot of these smaller regional firms that have been focusing not on the federal government, but on the state and local stuff, with plenty of work there too. They say, oh, we want all this federal money. I say, oh, Kat, we're interested in having you come up. Right? And I actually talked to someone, was at a big water conference covering it for Water Citizen Media, ran into these guys. Oh, you do planning, we do planning. Yay, that's great. And so I specialize in planning this by area. And I had all these contacts who used to be in the Obama administration, Biden administration, now in the, heading up all the Biden agency, right? And they said, We want to hire you, we want to hire you. But well, actually what we want you to do is write up a business plan with all your contacts and everything, give that to us. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, I was born at night, but not last night, folks. Yeah. Here, give that to your golf buddy and tell him, go straight. The other one is you should go win a contract and put us as a sub. And then maybe we'll consider hiring you. Because I wouldn't mind working for somebody and being part of a team again and being on the inside and having, healthcare benefits, which I haven't had forever, and all that stuff. Yeah. And yet, this one firm kept me coming in for meeting after meeting, which, by the way, they called themselves a woman-owned business because the guy had put it was a family business, and the guy had put in his wife's name. And then he put this, the environmental subsidiary at his son's name. And then he had his daughter as the marketing person. And then he got all these contracts and he started hiring all these other guys. Right. And after, months of meetings, they're like, well, we just hired this guy in Texas. He's a specialist in federal contracting. He's going to take care of all the federal contracting. Like, I'm here in Washington. I can't do that. And then he's got, and then my buddy at the Marine base, he's just retiring. He knows people. He's going to drum up business for us, but you should go get us contracts. That's a huge risk. You've got if you're the prime, you got the insurance, that's a huge risk to bring on someone else to be your sub, in the hopes that they're going to hire you. Screw that.
Well, there have been, the GAO, which is the Government Accounting Office, is the kind of research arm for Congress. And there have been a number of studies done by them and the Inspector General at SBA, the Small Business Administration, that have said, there need to be tighter controls because we can't count on everyone to be honest. And so what you just described is inherently not honest, right, and bordering on criminal.
Yeah.
So that's something that actually that we have been tackling as well. I started the Women's Procurement Circle last year.
Yeah, tell us about
women contractors that are just, I'm smiling because, it's just a really good group of very successful women in the government contracting space, and they help each other. We make the rules of the circle together. There's nobody that's, dictating anything. And we do things like talk about and try to affect change with respect to fraudulent companies where the husband has used his wife as the front woman, so to speak. And it just irritates me to no end. So, and everybody else. There's, you can't weed it out altogether because human nature kind of, doesn't allow for that, but right, you can put in as many controls and one of the controls was to require women to be certified by the SBA to be considered a woman-owned firm if they want to use the program I described earlier. Yeah. So we'll just keep on, chipping away at it because there are definitely a number of firms that, as I said, it's fraudulent. And I think it's unfortunate,
especially in our space. Women get to a point, either you've got a husband-wife team that, they work together at a large firm. Maybe they have to leave because they can't have fraternization, or they're ready to go and start a, family or whatever. And it's nominally a woman-owned small business when you actually talk to them. The guy's running the show and she's at home taking care of the kids. That's one of them. Or you have the guys who are, just blatantly putting in their wives' name. And then you have these women who leave. And in some cases, I've talked to so many women who have their own firm, barely getting enough contracts to get by, only having insurance because they have, their husbands. And it happens to men too. I know Black men who have done that, gone out on their own, and they're just regularly not getting, a decent amount of money for the work they're doing or not getting paid for the work they're doing and having to go through all these hoops. And it's just, it's not good in this space. And I know in some cases, if it's two women together starting a firm, that could work. It also could have some problems because it's nice to start it with someone else as a partnership, although it is like a marriage, and marriage can be tough. and
well, I never wanted a partner.
Yeah,
I never did, because I wanted control of my own destiny, and a partner is, as you said, it's like a marriage and a divorce, and I wanted neither one of those instances in the business, in my business. And so I never took that as the path I was going to take. There was no question I was in charge, and I was going to continue to be in charge.
Yeah.
I would also say about women, men who are really running the show and the women are, there. Like, what's wrong with you women? Like, why are you letting that happen? Right? So it's not just the males that are culpable in that situation. It's like women, why are they allowing that, or why are they willing to? I loved my husband's help because he had a financial background, and a kind of an operations background. So he was so helpful to me. Yeah. But I didn't make him a partner in my firm, and I mean, it's okay if a spouse helps you. Yeah. Nice. That's what they're supposed to do anyhow, right? You'd help them if the shoe was on the other foot. But in terms of doing something illegal, we're constantly working with SBA and the Congress to try to improve that and try to make sure that there's as little fraud as possible. And I think the certification has gone a long way toward helping with that.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. And I don't know if all the women that are getting their own little firm started and they're getting the little subcontracts and just trying to, I don't know if they even really understand it. It can seem like a very imposing hurdle to get those federal contracts. And of course, there's also a state level. When I was I was in Colorado, and I did all the basin planning meetings for the state water board. I learned about the as needed contract. And when I was hired by a big firm, they wanted me to start a whole new business practice. And but they hired me right after the deadline for the as needed contract submittals, which meant we had to wait a whole year before we could start doing that. And it would have been so easy, because once you're on that list, if it's up to $50,000, all you have to do is get out the back of a envelope and write out a contract, basically a little more than that, but it's basically just write out a scope work, task order, scope of work, whatever, and budget and everything, and boom, you're in, right? And that makes it a lot easier when these vehicles that are available, but you have to know about them. You have to get in at the right time. You have to have some past performance. There are, I think I have an example. Oh shoot, what do they call those sheets? It's like a little one pager, and it's got your, kind of a little summary of what you do, and then all your NAICS codes. And
the capability statement.
Thank you. Your capability statement. Yes. Cap sheet. Yeah. Your cap statement. Just something that is really easy for people to say, if you have relationships with federal agencies, if you've been working in consulting or for a utility or whatever for a while, and you're thinking about getting out there, you can even start learning this stuff before you make that jump. Once you no longer have, have a money magically appearing in your bank account every 2 weeks from direct deposit, you're at a different ballgame. But start thinking through this stuff before you say, screw you, I don't want to go back to the office. I'm hanging my shingle. I'm going to do the great resignation.
Yeah, I don't know how that worked for a lot of people. It worked out for some people, but it clearly didn't work out for other folks. I would say there's a couple of reasons why you might consider federal contracting or state and local contracting, frankly, is that most everything is public. Like if I want to contract with Pfizer, let's say, I don't have a clue what their budgets look like. If I want to contract with the federal government, I just can look in the agency budget is transparent. It's there. I can see what they spend on everything. Down to the program level. And if I want to try to influence it, I can do so on Capitol Hill. If I want to increase it, it won't necessarily come to my company directly, but I have the ability to try to influence the process to increase the money that goes into a program that might end up hiring me. Pretty good stuff. I mean, it's really the transparency, I think, is the major reason or the major plus, as opposed to the private sector, which is a stab in the dark. And the other thing I would say is that relationships are really private or public contracting. That's where you end up making the sale. At least in the public sector, they kind of have to meet with you. I mean, It might take them a while, it might take them pressure. I mean, we often pressure folks to meet with people that maybe they don't want to, but they'll feel the pressure. In the private sector, they don't want to talk to you. They don't feel any pressure to do so. Go get lost, right? So the public sector, that's another thing that I think is a real leg up when you're trying to build that part of the business. In the end, relationships are the key. And, it's not easy getting in front of federal officials or, buyers, but it's not easy to get in front of commercial buyers either. So I'm just saying there are some real advantages to considering federal contracting as a revenue stream that, frankly, once you get into it, can be really quite lucrative.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we started doing in Water Citizen is I'd already been learning a lot about online business and that sort of thing, and how individuals, a lot of the online business stuff, it started, online coaching, online expert-based business. We're not talking about just, selling crap online. We're talking about, people who'd gotten laid off after 2008. They were top experts in their field. They couldn't get a job, but they could go direct to clients. And it's really based on the old school direct to consumer, create that know, like, and trust factor through education-based marketing, through doing, online webinars, online summits, all sorts of ways that you can connect with people, some of whom might say, I really like that person. I think I'd like to work with them. And then those might eventually get into, a higher end, women's procurement circle, right? And so we started working with, we started finding out what people needed. A lot of people who were doing government contracting and whatnot, suddenly the association conferences that people were so dependent on, those were gone. And now they're back, but they have, if you've noticed, a lot of them have raised their prices significantly from pre-COVID levels, right?
Well, that's also because the vendors, I mean, to host a conference now or even a dinner is incredible in terms of the amount of the cost that you had before COVID. So it's just gone the whole way around. The other thing I would say about that is just there's also like this mix of virtual versus in person, and I think people are really struggling to figure out how to balance that and how to appeal to the most people. I don't envy people in that space.
and that you can really mix it up. We started something called Conversations with Contracts. It's like when you go to an event, you can start connecting with people before you get there. Mm-hmm. You can, first of all, you want to figure out, what is your purpose? What is your end goal? We're selling this. All right. Who do you want to meet before the contract? Who do you want to connect with during the contract? Where are you going to find them in that, or in that conference? And then not just come home with a stack of business cards, But to have a plan to say, by the way, after this conference is over, we're going to have a 6-part series on, how your agency can be helped with latest technologies in PFAS or water asset management. We helped one firm develop a program called the Water Asset Management 101. And just by having that online, hey, we're about to offer Water Asset Management 101. Who do you think people thought of when they thought of water asset management?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also use conferences and events. The people I'm most interested in is usually the speakers, because those are people that I need access to that are not particularly maybe interested in meeting with me. But boy, at a conference after they've given a talk, they're the friendliest people you've ever met. Are you kidding? So
right. That post-talk high is great.
The post-talk high, exactly. So I've used that for years, and it's a really successful strategy. Rather than just thinking about the attendees, I'm in on the speakers.
Right. Well, and when I started Water Citizen, we had the media side of that we could actually share the stories of water in an approachable, accessible way online versus, trade publications and association press and whatnot. And often, because I had the technical background, which most mainstream media doesn't understand a word out of people's mouths or have the history of knowing why something is new and significant. And you get people up on the stage and they're so excited. The thing is, you take an engineer or something and, stick a camera in their face. I would this so-and-so news, they're going to freeze. But if you have them like right after they've been talking about this great new technology or whatever, and then get them right after and just ask them like 3 key questions of the 3 top points, they're on a high, they're loose, they're excited, and they're animated, and they don't come across the way engineers usually do when they're like, boom, you're on the spotlight.
Right. So there's all kinds of strategies, I think, to make women successful in federal contracting. We went through the program, right, that you can use to try to assist. We went through strategies being a lot like, in many cases, the private sector, only much more transparent. There's a prompt payment that had the Department of the Defense uses. It's just a whole different world if all you've done is commercial work. But I would encourage anybody who's listening to this to at least think about sticking their toe in that water to see if it's for them,
so to speak. We're good on water jokes at this conference. Yeah. Oh, by the way, one of the things that often happens in the space is people think, oh, well, I want to do something on this. I want to do something good in the world. I'm going to create a nonprofit. A lot of nonprofits get caught in the grant cycle, right? Where you write a grant and suddenly you're basically a consultant for that grant funder and you're doing all your work. And then you chase another big grant, right? And competing against the big green and big blue, giant, enormous grant.
Yeah.
But are there opportunities as well as a nonprofit to get a contract if you're providing services and things like meeting facilitation or doing studies, or how does that work from a nonprofit perspective to get federal contracts?
Well, a nonprofit is, pretty easy to start up, right? You just call the IRS, you get a number. I mean, it's not terribly difficult. I've done
Not anymore. When we started, it was post Enron. It was going to be $25,000 of legal fees and everything. When the 1023 EZ started, that really sped up the process, at least for your first, until you get to 50K. So it's a lot easier now, but yes.
Right. It's pretty easy. And it's helpful if you want to get grants instead of contracts, right? So grants.gov is where you find all the grants that the government puts out there. And a lot of it is kind of the same process, though. You have to fill out all the paperwork. You have to come up with the plan you're going to use to execute a lot of the same thing. but it would go through your nonprofit rather than a for-profit business. It's a little daunting for a for-profit business to start a nonprofit just because to care and feed for that as well, and keeping, you know, kind of the lines, you know, in from strictly commercial or strictly federal and direct versus federal and grant, can be pretty darn confusing. So I guess I'm kind of saying, in my experience, pick one is a pretty good option.
Right. I mean, we are a nonprofit. We are a 501c3. I do know that some of the larger 501c3s end up creating like a consulting arm, and I'm not quite clear, are those businesses or those, you know, still nonprofit, whatever.
Yeah, that's how they get the, you know, the direct contracts versus a grant.
Right.
Shove them off, right?
Because the grants, there's no women-owned or women-led, because you don't own it as a nonprofit, no women-led nonprofit set aside, you know, so then you're competing with every big nonprofit that has grant writers that can go after, you know, the big family foundation money. And if you're starting out, that's really hard to get, you know, if you happen to be good friends with a steel magnets family and they give you $250,000, you're sitting pretty. But if you don't, you know, kind of hard to get that stuff.
Yeah. We've got some clients that are nonprofits, and it, you know, when it comes down to it, it's just as complex as the government contracting you and I were talking about before. There's no shortcut on either scenario.
Right. Very cool. Well, I think, and so I know we got to run. Are there any issues on Capitol Hill that anyone interested in this should be paying attention to right now? Any members? I know we have Water Week coming up in April. A lot of people are going to be flying to DC. Are there people that we should talk to? Not we being as a 501c3, but people who are watching may want to talk to while they're in town to support women-owned small businesses in the water and environmental space.
Well, the best thing that you can do to support any efforts with respect to women is to have meetings with some of your delegation. What I mean by that, your congressional delegation, you have two senators, and then you have a congressperson that is assigned to, that has a district in which you're in. So there's really three people that you're a constituent of, or that your business is in. If you have a business, it can also be that. And just go talk to them about the importance of elevating women's success in both federal contracting, if that's what you're into, water policy. I mean, whatever it is that you feel really passionate about. And we'd love if you were passionate about helping women succeed in the business world. That's all really important because it comes from a constituent relationship.
Right.
And that's more important than anything else.
So better than if there's anyone in small business committee, House and Senate.
I mean, you can, but you know, we have those people covered, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
What we need and what's the most important is that the constituent is talking to the elected official who they vote for, right? Or maybe they didn't even vote for it, but they're located in their area. And so that's the most important reinforcement of any message I'm carrying, or anybody who's an advocate is carrying, is making sure that the elected officials hear directly from the constituents in their area and their district.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time. Any final thoughts for our audience before we go, if they're thinking about starting down this route? And by the way, we will share the information on the page where you're watching this. Lots of resources, any resources in that you want to provide, we can put those on there. Information, link to the women's procurement circle, all that. Right.
Well, there are so many, but I think my number one takeaway is that your best allies can also be your competitors in this space. And so form alliances with other women that are doing the same thing you're trying to achieve or do, because I find that group to be much more of a circle. That's why actually we call it a circle, right? A circle rather than, an adversarial relationship. I see so much business being done between women-owned companies. And so if I were to start out on a new venture, those are the first people I would seek out. They'll help you. And and they're not hard to find, and they'll drop everything to help you. So that's my kind of number one advice.
Good. Thank you so much, Ann Sullivan, for being
All
here
right,
with
thank
us.
you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Keep coming back and watch all the rest of the amazing interviews that we have at the Women of Water Get Real Virtual Summit. Bye,
Thank
all.
you.
Thanks so much for joining us for this extraordinary conversation, one of 45 extraordinary conversations we had as part of the Women of Water Get Real Virtual Summit, where we explored where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and even bring women back to water. I hope that you will enjoy all of these amazing interviews. If you don't have a chance to watch all of them during the summit, you have the opportunity to join us with a power pack and get lifetime access to all the videos, as well as an opportunity to join us for 30 days in a brand new community where we will dig even deeper in live facilitated conversations about some of the issues that are facing women in water. Look forward to seeing you there. Please join us at watercitizen.org/women, watercitizen.org/women for more information. See you again soon.